Nick and Sheryl Pollock are young farmers who've turned a flood-ravaged, erosion-prone East Coast hill country property into a textbook case of wise land use. As a result, they won the 2012 Michael Hay Memorial Award, given to a young member of the New Zealand Farm Forestry Association who's involved in planting or establishing trees. We visited them at the end of March this year.
It's 130 hectares. It's pretty much all south-facing. What we've done is sort of a mix of horticulture, pastoral, and more recently some forestry on the steeper stuff. It was part of a Martbury station, which most of it was across the highway, and in 2001 I brought everything on the western side of the road that they had. For the start we just ran about 200 bulls, and about 4 or 5 years ago we changed sort of out of the bulls, went into cows, and now we've got 50 cows and 20 bulls. It's a very wet block. The river's called Moritaha. It's really hammered us on several occasions since buying the place the first time. It hit us was in 2002. The creek right beside us here changed its course, went right across the paddock in behind. At the end of that we had one paddock left that was still stock secure out of the 11 that we bought the place with. We'd still like to plant some more trees in a pastoral situation, not so much as forestry. I'll always add more trees here and there, but I think balance-wise, we have still got about 3 hectares of flat land that we could plant in horticulture, but it works well for the farm. It's well fenced, handy to the yards, so the property works well with that. So at this stage, we're just trying to consolidate with what we've got, try and get some production out of the likes of the feed-growers here and make it work really before we sort of start taking on any more. But I'm pretty pleased with what we have done, planting the riparian areas and the steep bits of hill country. I hope with what we've done, it'll be an economic unit. As 130 hectares of a pastoral farm, it was always going to be a very small and never an economic unit, I don't believe, with the type of country that we've got. But converting that across to what we've done, it's easier to run. But with 8 hectares of orchard is actually a reasonable sized little orchard, plus the other parts to the business. Hopefully it's set up pretty well for the future. These have been planted coming up 4 years ago. The varieties are Kakariki and Kaiteri. Big sized fruit, early maturing. We're not very early here. We're probably 2 to 3 weeks behind the early guys in Gisborne. And then the other variety that we've got quite a lot of hasn't quite started yet, and we've been picking these for 10 days though, so the bulk of the crop is actually off now. The reason I originally planted feed-growers in this piece is down the far end we get some shading, and of the property it's probably the highest frost risk. And feed-growers are one of the crops that flower quite late and the fruit's off pretty early, so the chance of us getting a frost in that time frame is very low, and that was one of my first considerations for why we decided to put some feed-growers in. On the terrace up above us here, I've got 2 hectares of mandarins, and then between them I've planted deciduous on the steep slope here because I still want airflow to come off that terrace so we get good air drainage, because we do get frost here, but not bad. In a cold year, frosts are a concern. So I want the shelter, but I also want the air drainage. So we've put 2 hectares of mandarins up there. We've got lemons beside the feed-growers here, and totaling about 2 hectares back by the house as well. We've planted about 70,000 trees in the last 3.5 years. That comprises of about 70 different species, and there's about 15 different species of eucalyptus alone. We're in amongst ukes that were planted in October 2010, so they're 3.5 years old now. Most of these trees are part of the Dryland Initiative species, but not formally part of the trial. So most of them are ground durable coppicing species. It's looking at taking ground durable ukes. When we say ground durable, a stake as small as inch by an inch could last in the ground for 20 plus years. And so growing these timbers in New Zealand for the use for vineyard timbers and things like that, for post replacements, don't need any treatment in the ground, but also very valuable timbers as well. Cross arms for power poles, railway sleepers, they're all been ground durable eucalypts out of Australia, and now that resource is running out. We know we can grow them in New Zealand, but they've been wild populations. This is about putting some science behind it and growing reliable stands of good form, good durability trees. A lot of water comes down through this. It's a wet paddock. And so the whole paddock went in trees here, but it's on the southern edge of the property. And so we planted the whole paddock, whereas the others we fenced off specific parts of paddocks for trees. I've tried to go for some colour in the timber, coppice species, ground durable. The Gleboidea doesn't have a lot of colour, but we also know it grows very well in the district. So I did a bit of weighing up on things like that. Pines are not part of what I've tried to do, but we did use pine to keep costs down. On the very steepest areas, hardest country, we've used pines. And across the valley, I've also done sort of 1/3 pine, 2/3 redwoods. And that's purely to keep the costs down. We've still got probably 700 stems per hectare of redwoods in there, so the first thing we'll do is thin out all those pines in a few years' time. This is all part of the afforestation grant scheme, our government's initiative around carbon forestry. So we can't earn any carbon here for 10 years from planting. The government gets all of that, and in return for that, we got a grant here for $2,100 a hectare. And so I must maintain the forest for 10 years. After that, I can do whatever I like with the forest. I can chop it out if I want to, not that that's our plan. I mean, I've done it for the kids and grandkids and things in the future, hopefully, but our obligation with the Crown is for 10 years.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.